Howdy, folks. This is Jim Arak on the UFO Report, once again with the honor of presenting live on the Hannibal TV. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. We have a really fabamundo, as the Fonz would say, episode. It's unreal. I've actually never met somebody that's accomplished so much in well, I guess the gentleman's been doing this for 20 years, but it's like, oh my God, I don't know what to say. He's really done a lot. He's quite impressive. He's an independent creator, researcher, writer, and field investigator in all sorts of aspects of the totally weird, uncool, paranormal, exciting stuff. It's without further ado, just because for God's sakes I could go on and be the end of the episode by the time I finish talking about him. Ladies and gentlemen, why don't we bring him on up? Please welcome Mr. Nomar Slevik.
Hey,
great to have you, and again, thank you for your time. It's wow, what can I say? I have some things that I'm going to put up on the stage that we can go over and talk about. How many books have you actually authored?
I think 10. And first of all, Jim, thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Sure.
But yeah, I think 10. There are a couple of books that are kind of like companion pieces to some other projects I did. So they weren't like books in their own right. They were like just like an addendum to another project. Okay. So I think I'm throwing those in there. So I think it's around 10.
Okay. It's interesting. I guess we'll go through it, but then I noticed then you have a sort of like a trilogy. And then also you have, I noticed on one of them with Old Man in the Mountains, or I guess nowadays you call them, there was an Old Man in the Mountains. It looks like you have 4 or 5 different cover variations on that.
A little bit, yeah. There's a hardcover version, and then there's a paperback cover version. And in 2030, it'll be the 10-year anniversary, and I'm already working on a 10-year anniversary re-release of that book, which means it'll be like rewritten and an updated chapter for what's been going on the last 10 years. And I posted that recently because it was just recently the 6th anniversary of that book coming out. And, if you don't celebrate these books yourself, no one's going to do it. So I like to, celebrate their anniversaries and things like that.
That's very cool. That gives me a different perspective. And I did notice, Nomar, that you've a lot of things, folks. I did forget to mention that for more than 20 years, there's been hundreds of thousands of enthusiasts that have either read or watched your work, Nomar. And one thing that a lot of things I admire. One thing I noticed is you have some audio book chapters and podcasts that you have for free just to get people interested. And also, I appreciate the personal copy of In the Pines, but I noticed that you were saying online, and I don't blame you. Say, if you can't afford it or for whatever reason, then you can get a PDF copy. But and if you want to distribute for learning purposes, that's cool. But it's totally uncool if you want to basically just take the whole work and distribute it, which obviously that's copyright infringement. But at the same time, I'd say that's very generous that you enjoy, but also encourage people to share different tidbits or pictures.
Yeah, to this day, because this is what I do, and it's either feast or famine, and as of late it's been a lot of famine, and I remember what it's like, and I still know what it's like, wanting all these different books and all these different documentaries, and I want to consume, and you can't afford everything, so if somebody in earnest emails me and be like, yo man, I really would like a copy of your book, I just can't afford it, I will absolutely email a PDF copy. That would be my pleasure to do. So yeah, I definitely encourage, sharing of my work. I love it when my books are accepted at libraries, so people, so more people can read them, and and all that good stuff. But yeah, that's my kind of my thought on it.
Yeah, I did notice that too. That's got to be a cool experience with the libraries. You've been invited and you've spoken at several of them. And I saw them like, oh, cool, maybe I can see you in person. But that one was I blew something in Maine.
Oh yeah, Blue Hill. Yeah, it's quite a ways away from you.
yeah. I couldn't walk there in about 5 minutes. But I guess well, there's a lot I'd like to get into. But
Sure.
one of the biggest things is whether it's being an author or you're a filmmaker and producer, and you've got your podcasts and field investigation. A lot of it is based around the Northeast, and especially in Maine.
That's right.
Is there like every state has their paranormal hotspot,
Yeah.
or if you go around the world, you could say some of the hotspots might be certain marshes or certain lakes. So you got bodies of water, or other people feel that depending on what you're looking at, that you can find things near higher magnetic field areas. Have
Sure.
you noticed any general trends in Maine, or is Maine just so big and there's just so much land and all sorts of terrain you couldn't really put your finger on what it is?
In my opinion, yeah, that's what I think it is, the latter. It's so vast, and I actually think everywhere, even in places in states that people think there are hot spots, I really just think it's happening everywhere all the time. It's just a matter of paying attention. Also, I think it's a matter of like, I don't know how far my belief goes in this, but I think it's interesting that sometimes two people can be standing right next to each other and see a ghost or see a UFO or something and have two totally different experiences. And so I think that a lot of this is happening everywhere. I don't even know now if like hotspots exist. I just think everywhere is a hotspot. It's whether you're allowed to see it for whatever reason, or if you're tuned into it for whatever reason, or if you're just paying attention. And I know that I like to pay attention, and I think I pay attention a little bit more than most, at least locally. I'm always looking up. I'm always looking in the woods. I'm always listening for stuff. So I don't know. I guess that's in a very brief nutshell. That's kind of my thought on it.
Do you? Interesting, you mentioned that, Nomar, about different experiences. It's until we get it down to an exact science and technology, we never know. But what do you think about the quantum entanglement theory, and if some people are connected? And quantum entanglement, we'll have a whole episode on that for those science and technology nerds. But what do you think about that? As far as that being a reason why not everybody sees it?
I think that is definitely viable, but it's really just as viable as any other theory. You know what I mean? Hey, thanks. Well, that's cool. Penobscot area. He's absolutely right. And thanks to the other person that welcomed me. I appreciate it. But yeah, I think it's definitely a plausible theory and a probable theory. But again, somebody else will have a different theory that, ghosts are dead people and it's black and white and that's it. And they could be right too. I don't know.
Yeah, here's a good one for you. And to this date, nobody knows. A common friend of ours, Diego, the podcaster, he didn't know, and he referred me to a paranormal, ghost hunter. He didn't know, so I came up with my own theory. But what do you think about this? Compare an orb. There's all sorts of, I'm obsessed with orbs, but compare an orb that you see, all sorts of colors, like Skinwalker Ranch, the destructive blue orbs, or then there's green orbs, or somebody sees a bizarre orb that's coming out of the lake, whatever. Now compare that to, let's say, a known haunted mansion or known, let's call it ancient, I don't know, Native American woods or forest, whatever, where you see orbs there. So one seems spiritual or like a ghost and freaks the hell out of you, and the other one's like, oh my God, wow, a UFO or an alien being. My theory is that sometimes they're one and the same, and as human beings we can't tell. But what do you think about that? Because nobody had an answer, and I'm like, well, what if they're the same thing?
Yeah, and that's my answer. I think it's all connected. I think all too often for the last 20, 30, well, really since Holzer and all these people that have been investigating this stuff for decades, I think a lot of times people are looking at this stuff through their own lens, like a ghost hunter looks through it through a paranormal ghost hunting, people are dead sort of way. And then cryptid hunters, they see entities or creatures, and it's typically like flesh and blood, but an unknown creature. And then somebody like me will look through an extraterrestrial lens and see an orb or something and think that's more otherworldly than it is haunted related. But as as I continue to learn as a researcher and as I continue to hear all these really interesting stories, I'm starting to think it's all connected and they're all the same thing. And we're just using different language to describe the same thing, so that's my thought on it. You can see an orb in a haunted house just as easily as you can see a plasma ball in the sky. And they're kind of similar. Now, I will say orbs caught on camera inside of a house in a paranormal investigation sort of sense, I think a lot of that is dust. That's my opinion on that, and probably some insects and stuff. But when you see something with your own eyes and it's orb-like, that's a little bit different, in a paranormal investigation sense. But again, these are all just my subjective opinions.
Yeah, it's that's right. And until I love all of this from like the science and technology aspect of it. Sure. And to me, this stuff, and of course there's a spiritual element. And I had the honor of meeting some good scientists as I got into ufology, and they're very scientific, yet they're talking about spirituality.
That's cool. Yeah.
And I'm sure you I'm sure you agree with that. I guess we got this. My God, there's so much to get into here. But before I pull it up, I would like to talk about something that how you got started in all this when you were a very young child. If you could please tell us, because it's a fascinating story, and then there's
sure.
Sure.
So. When I was about 4 or 5 years old, I had a peculiar incident happen. I was woken up in the middle of the night by a loud noise, a loud bang. And when I say middle of the night, I'm a 4 or 5 year old, so that could be 9 p.m. or 3 a.m. I don't know. But I wake up and I'm kind of like looking around for an explanation. And then I start to hear these taps on my window. So I look over there and I see the sky light up, and I'm like, oh, it's a thunder and lightning storm. So I kneel up on my bed to look out the window, and I'm watching, I can see the sky light up. And we lived at the time right at the tip of Maine. You could throw a rock and hit Canada, and the St. John River was like basically in front of my house, and I could see it raging. I'm like, well, this is a crazy storm, So I'm watching it, and just after a few moments, there was this really disturbing lightning bolt. Like if I were to ask you to draw a lightning bolt, you would draw this jagged yellow line. And I saw this lightning bolt stuck in a cloud. And even at that age, I knew that you could see lightning just very quickly. But this was staying there, and it was stuck there. And I'm seeing like electricity coming off of it, and there's like a halo around it. Sometimes you see a halo around the sun, usually in the winter around here. But there's like this halo around it, electricity coming off of it, and there were these booms associated with it. And the next thing I know, I woke up the next morning. I go to the bathroom, like nothing had happened, and I'm walking from the bathroom back to my bedroom, and I can see out the window, and it's still there. And I'm like, this is crazy. So I go downstairs to get my dad to show him. So we go all the way upstairs, and when we get to my window, it's gone. So I'm trying to explain to him about, the rain and the thunder and lightning storm, and he's just kind of like patting my head like, yeah. But then I must have been really insistent, because he had to like get down on my level, put his hands on my shoulders, and he's like, buddy, it didn't even rain last night. Like, I don't know what you're talking about. And, the next shiny thing caught my attention because I'm so young and I kind of forget all about it. A couple of weeks later, I'm woken up again in the middle of the night, but this time it's my dad waking me up. He brings me downstairs, and I can see my mom dressing my sister in her winter clothes because it was in the middle of winter. And then she does the same thing to me. And then my dad scoops me up, and we all walk outside to the front lawn. And in my head, I'm like, what the hell's going on? A 4-year-old version of that. And I have my head shoved in his chest because it's freezing. And he keeps saying to me, you got to look up, buddy. You got to look up. So I finally take my head out of his chest and I look up, and I see this kaleidoscope of colors. And it's the Northern Lights, the Aurora Borealis. And it's the only time in my life that I've seen it. We've had the Aurora Borealis like in 2024 and 2025 and probably some this year. Never see it. It's always friggin' cloudy here. So that was like the only time I saw it. And so I think those two things happening at such a young age and close proximity created like this core memory. And it said to me, weird stuff happens in the sky and you should probably pay attention. And so I think that's the origin. Like once I got into be a preteen and a teenager, I thought back about the lightning bolt, and I'm like, oh, is that the first time I saw a UFO? And I just didn't know how to process it. I saw it as a lightning bolt, but I think that was the catalyst. That's my origin story.
And Nomar, so something happened to your vision. Was that after the Aurora Borealis, or was that after the first incident when you were?
I think it was after both of them. And I'll get into that a little bit. So I would lay down in bed and, try to go to sleep. My mom would put me to bed and all that good stuff. And I would lay down and I'd have my eyes closed, and I could start to see the night sky. And after that happened, it didn't matter if my eyes were open or closed. I would still see the night sky, and I would see all these stars. And I would see one star in particular that would start to move, and it was moving all over. And the way I described it in my book was that it kind of looked like somebody using an Etch-a-Sketch really fast. So it was all these angles, and it wasn't making the shape, because it was just a star moving. But yeah, so I'm seeing this point of light moving, and I don't know what the hell to think of that. Like, what is that?
Yeah, with your permission, Nomar, I've seen some correlation, although I'm working on that with a couple of colleagues, based on what you described. I'd like permission to nickname this the Etch-a-Sketch anomaly. and
I would love that. I would love it.
Yeah, and the reason is when you were, Nomar, when you were seeing it. Well, I'll let you explain to people what happened when you would see this.
I don't know. My vision was really, I was having a lot of vision problems, but not during the day. It just only seemed to be at night. But again, I don't know if this is related. Yes, that's exactly right. Returned abductee. So like my vision was snowy, kind of like a snowy television at night. And like, it still is like that to this day. So when it's dark and there's no other light source, when I look around, it's very grainy. It's very kind of like a snowy television. I can still see objects and my hand in front of my face, but again, it's very grainy. Okay. And in doing some research for the first book, when I had talked about this story, I actually talked to an eye doctor who did not allow me to use his name, so I won't now. But he thought it was not a vision issue, that it was a neurological issue, that there was something wrong with my brain. And, I
Well,
suppose that's possible.
yeah, yeah.
But yeah, so he was convinced it was not a vision thing. And, and so since I still kind of experience it, and I'm just so used to it, so it feels natural. But for years, like I think I was like in my 20s, and I was talking to a buddy, and I was like, and I was explaining something to him about getting up and going to the bathroom, and I was like, how everything at night is like really grainy and kind of looks like the snow on television. And they're like, what are you talking about? I'm like, like when it's dark, everything's grainy. And they're like, no, what? That's not a thing, man.
Wow.
What are you talking about? And that was, so I was in my 20s when, so I just thought it was normal that everybody had that sort of thing, so that's, and I was kind of right in the process of writing the book. So that's why I talked to the eye doctor, and they're like, yeah, that's not really a vision thing that I hear about. It's that, to me, that sounds neurological. But anyway, but yeah, that's kind of the stuff that was happening surrounding that when I was younger.
Was there any type of interaction at all that you can remember?
Interaction?
Yeah.
In what sense?
Like maybe towards the beginning when you first noticed that something changed when you were.
If so, it's not a thing that I remember, but
Okay.
Something happened to my dad right around that time. And I wrote about it in a book that actually came out, I think it was last year, actually.
Okay.
But my dad saw this figure in the basement of the house we were living in when I had, the lightning bolt experience and the, seeing the little lights. He saw like a 5-foot tall green figure in the basement. And it was a very surreal thing for him too. It was very dreamlike to him. Yeah. And he's a skeptic. He doesn't believe in this stuff. He's very supportive of what I do, but he's certainly skeptical. And for him to tell me that he saw this figure and it was right around that same time frame, I thought was really weird. And he actually saw it like behind this wood stove that was down in the basement, and it was actually like behind, it was like peeking around this wall, like around the corner of this wall, but the wall was between the wall and this other place. Like a human couldn't stand there. Like we would store our storm windows there, so it was very thin, and the storm windows were there. So how this figure was there, or maybe it was just a dream, I don't know. But I thought it was really strange that my dad told me this story, and it happened right around the same time that I saw the lightning bolt and stuff.
That's, and that's another thing that I'm curious about, Nomar, is when these things happen, it's almost like it's so surreal that you gotta that you pause to think about it, and you're staring or you're listening, and you're like, either that doesn't seem right, or you're like, I won't give away too much of your latest book that we're going to talk about, but in one part of your book, you and a friend are pondering. I think you said this is back in '94. You were pondering what the heck that lit up half dome was floating down the river, and as you're pondering, saying, what could that be? For all you know, it was some sort of bizarre UFO, and while you're pondering, it just floats by, as you said, and it's interesting because you don't always get that terrified, run for cover type of thing.
Yeah, that's been a common thread, throughout all my time doing this, is the way people react. Like when people are having a ghost encounter or a cryptid encounter or UFO encounter or some sort of weird dimensional thing, you're not like, oh my God, I'm seeing a ghost, or, oh my God, that's a monster, or that's, I'm seeing an extraterrestrial. A lot of times you're like, what the hell is that? What am I seeing? Something's wrong with my eyesight. Like, what's happening? And you're yeah, exactly. The signs will go, you're processing in the moment, and your brain is trying to make sense of the thing that you saw. And it's trying to put a human element to it. And sometimes there just isn't a human element to put on top of it.
Yeah, so you become almost like the Scooby-Doo.
Yeah.
And you're like, let's chase after it and find out more about this. And you definitely strike me as the type of person that that would do that actually. If
I try to. There has been times when I've turned around. I can tell that story if you want, but
sure,
but
sure, absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely. Um, was that is that in one of your works, or that's just
I'm not
something?
sure. I'm not sure I wrote about that one, but I was in Acadia National Park. This was just like 4 or 5 years ago.
Uh-huh.
But I was in Acadia National Park, middle of the day, and I'm riding my bike. And in Acadia National Park, which is in Maine, they have all these trails that they call the cottage roads, and it's quite literally like I'm sorry, the carriage trails. Cottage roads, what am I talking about? It's called the carriage trails, and the people from Maine will be like, what the hell are you talking about? No more. Yeah, they're the carriage trails, and quite literally, like back in the day when they built Acadia National Park and they were making all these trails, it was carriages with horses would take people throughout Acadia National Park that were having like this was for disabled people or for older people that had trouble walking around. They had a horse and carriage to take people around. And so these carriage roads still exist, and there's like 45 miles of them. It's crazy. So I'm in a pretty remote area of Acadia National Park, right in the middle of the day. In the summer, we get like millions of tourists, like in a 4-month period. And so the Acadia National Park is typically filled with people, but I had been riding my bike in this more remote area for like 10 minutes and I hadn't seen a soul, which is pretty crazy. So I keep riding my bike and I'm coming around this big bend. Like I can't see down the road. It's just a big curve. And as I'm riding, I get this really overwhelming sense of dread. So I stop riding my bike and I'm like, what the hell's going on? And the wind kind of picks up and I'm like, what the? And then I get an image in my head. I don't know if it was beamed there or if there was a telepathic thing happening, but it was friggin' weird. And what I pictured was this monster, this giant, standing in the middle of the road around the bend. And to me, it seemed like a Bigfoot type of creature. And it was standing there. And if I continued to ride, I would run into it and something bad might happen.
Oh, screw that.
Yeah. And as much as I love this stuff, I had this awful feeling and I couldn't shake it. I couldn't persist. So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to turn around. And I turn around and I start riding away. And it seems like everything kind of goes back to normal. Like the wind dies down. I can start hearing things again. I didn't realize I was kind of like in a vacuum, but I'm starting to hear like the birds and stuff again. And sure enough, like less than 10 minutes, I start running into people and I'm like, oh, okay. So there are people here. I don't know. It was really strange, but that's one thing that happened. And I did not stick around for that one.
Yeah. Your intuition or insight served you well, which, yeah.
Hopefully. I mean, also it would have been amazing if I kept going and got this awesome picture of a Bigfoot in Acadia.
Oh my God. As an independent investigator, Nomar, did you ever, one thing that I really, really need to do is get myself some IR equipment, although sure. It's going towards like $1,000 depending on what you get. Did you ever have the finances to do anything like that, or?
Yeah. For quite a while, I had a lot of infrared cameras, no thermal cameras, because those have always been way too expensive. But okay. I definitely had some infrared cameras and obviously like audio recording gear and good stuff like that. At one point I had a Geiger counter that I used on a couple of investigations, which was cool. I ended up getting readings at this one place. Where there was a recent UFO sighting and it was just slightly, but above normal background radiation, which I thought was interesting. But yeah, so I had some of that stuff. I don't have it so much now. Like, my work has kind of evolved over the years, and instead of like boots on the ground, tons of investigations, it's more turned into interviewing people, researching newspaper archives of all kinds, Project Blue Book, all that good stuff. Look at NICAP, old files. and trying to find things Northeast United States related. And then I take those, what I find, and try to research them as much as I can. And then I share them in my books. But I've also turned into like this storyteller where I go out in public settings, where places will have me, typically libraries, and I share a lot of these stories because I think it's important that people know that people in their community are reporting these strange things. It's a matter of historical record.
Yeah. Oh, it is. You're totally right. It's a show.
Yeah.
You get these crazy stories from, I don't know, back in the 1600s or 1700s all the way forward. And
Yeah.
I noticed that in the Pines a little bit. God, there's just there's so much to cover. I think I better throw this in before we never get to it. But I got to tell you, I don't know if you saw my little memo I posted to you on your Facebook. I wrote a poem in your honor. Is kind of a little corny, but also a little weird, because I got to tell you, when I saw this picture, were you finishing up your latest book when you posted this picture?
I think so.
And I got to, folks, if you want to know what it's like entering the world of Nomar, it's not no man's land, it's Nomar's land. And be prepared to get weirded out, but also enthralled. And that's what this picture did to me. And it kind of reflects the bizarre reality that we're dealing with. And that's definitely one thing that I appreciate about your work. Now that I'm new to it and already I like it, is the fact that there's just so much strange stuff out there.
Yeah, I don't shy away from it either. Like, the stranger the better. I'll talk about it. A lot of people, they need all of this like nuts and bolts, and we need to find out the veracity of the witness, the veracity of the actual claim, the veracity of the evidence. And I'm like, if it's strange, I want to talk to the person and I want to share their story. It's not about belief or proof. It's about believing a person within reason. Of course, I've talked to a lot of people where I'm like, oh, you're full of it, and, and that's, it is what it is. That happens with everything. But for these people that are convinced that these things are happening to them, it's very traumatic. And I try to seek out these people, and a lot of them come to me now where they want to share the strange things that have happened to them, and I'm really hard pressed not to believe them. I obviously don't believe everything 100%, but at the very least, I believe that they believe it, and that's good enough for me,
Jill from Ill Squared Research has a weather anomaly question for you.
Nomar, did you ever look into weather anomalies in the area and any corresponding reports? I have, actually. I've done it for like specific cases, not just like generally, but for specific cases, if somebody said they saw, some type of UFO or some type of creature or something like that, I definitely check out the weather stuff that was going on, before and after and during. And I check out a lot of different things too. And I make sure, if I'm interviewing somebody, asking them what happened before, during, and after as well, because the whole surrounding stuff is just as important as the event itself, because you might get some information you didn't know you needed, by just asking more questions than you might think you need. But yeah, I've absolutely have searched weather anomalies with certain reports. Sure.
Very cool.
There's a website. What's it called? Weather Underground. That's
yes.
If anybody's out there, that's something I use quite a bit.
Yes, Weather Underground. Yeah, that's something that they taught us MUFON field investigators to use. It's kind of interesting. How's the historical weather? Nomar, my hats off to you in a weird sort of way. There's not too many people that would go to Screaming Bridge and look for EVPs. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. There's a legend about a woman in white. It's become known as the legend of the Screaming Bridge. I'm not really sure why, other than maybe it's the screeching tires that people hear when they encounter a woman in white on this particular bridge that you can see the picture of right there. That's in a really small town called Millinocket, or just outside of it. And actually, this bridge in particular was actually torn down, and it's kind of a more modern bridge now. but people are still running into this woman in white. And just like small town America everywhere, there's tons of woman in white stories. This one is no different. She was either on her way home or on her way to a wedding. There was a car accident, something happened, and the woman dies, and now she is seen on this bridge. And some people claim that she has gotten into the backseat of their cars, or like has just appeared there. And I wanted to go, and I was doing a podcast episode on it, so I decided to drive up to it and conduct
Out of my car.
I wish that would have happened, but went up there with my girlfriend, and we went to see if there was any sort of EVPs that we could catch, and we didn't catch any, but we had a really cool time exploring the area. Because with the bridge, obviously it's surrounded by water, and there's an area where you can park down by the water and go under the bridge and all this cool stuff. So at the very least, it was a very cool area to check out. And we did catch a couple of anomalies on the audio, but we can't say there were actual EVPs, but it sounded like something was there that shouldn't have been there. But again, if I can't quantify it, or if it's not very clear, I'm not going to bring it forth as evidence, but it was cool.
Ill squared research, and I happened upon the anomaly that said that's clever, but we're still trying to figure it out. So we haven't released it or publicized it other than just now when I mentioned it to you. But it's weird because, like you said, you get something and you try to figure it out, and you've got all this processing software, and you try to figure out, was that really it? Was that what it really said? And
right.
Have you had those? Do you remember Ghost Hunters and Ghost Hunters International?
Oh, sure.
Have you had those sessions where you had to sit there for hours and try to process? Yeah.
Yeah, I had a team once. We were called Prime Paranormal, and Prime stood for Paranormal Research in Maine. And we were together for about 4 or 5 years, and we investigated a lot of different homes. We did a couple of businesses, but it was mostly residential homes. Yeah. And we caught numerous class A EVPs. We caught a child like laughing and saying mommy, and it was clear as a child being in the room actually saying those things. I've heard my name, we've been sworn at, so we've caught quite a few really great EVPs over the years.
What kind of properties or areas or buildings were those?
Mostly rural homes. Just your run of the mill. I mean, very similar to Massachusetts. How the homes are in the Northeast.
Oh my God! There's one that really creeps me out, and I met him from MUFON, Mass, and he was telling me that his bedroom's all fucked up, and I took his word for it. We're gonna have an episode with him.
Cool.
Not too long from now. His the way this guy reacted to UFOs, but I don't want to do a spoiler. But yeah, his place. He and his wife says that it's haunted, and I believe him. Some scary shit. It'd be very interesting to see something in infrared or whatever. Although he said it was tricky, but I believe you when you said you got sworn at and you're. Do you think those are? I read in the Pines that I'm trying to remember which ghost it was, but someone's uncle or something like that. But it's you believe that it's a residual haunting as opposed to an interactive one. You had written. And did you experience any of those or with those EVPs?
I think we experienced both. We've caught and heard with our own ears like a lot of footsteps. So when we're catching stuff like that doesn't seem to like interact with us, we caught like some shadows walking by us, and when they don't interact, I really have no other explanation other than maybe it's residual, and it's just a tape playing over and over, and they don't know that we're there. Whereas, catching an EVP that's swearing at you or saying your name, or you're having a K2 session and you're asking yes and no questions, and you get the lights to light up, and it's very interactive. To me, that's more of an active haunting.
it'd be very interesting if like you started getting into like a swearing competition and you're telling each other off. That would be. Although
we try not to be like Ghost Adventures, or we weren't. We're very chill.
There's so this is your latest work, which I guess I'm proud to say I didn't read through all of it because it gives me something to look forward to, but it's enthralling, and you've got a lot in there, everything from you've got UFO experiences to the residual haunting to creatures.
And there's even like bizarre true crime, missing people. I typically write about like my first kind of bulk of books, like my first 5 books were all UFO related, and lately, like since 2024, I've been expanding out more and writing more about creatures and humanoids and ghosts, and then within the Pines there's still UFO stories and there's still creature stories, but again, bizarre true crime, missing people, missing time, cursed lands. So if I find a strange story and I'm enthralled by it, I want to include it so other people can hopefully find it just as fascinating.
And what would you say to those stupid idiots that feel that they're a well-seasoned MUFON field investigator with a Master of Science in Electrical Engineering, and they learned about, say, muddy swamps that are either haunted or have UFO visits and people have disappeared? Would you tell tell them, no, don't go there, don't do it, or what would you say?
The only thing I would say, well, I guess I would say 2 things: do it and have an open mind.
Okay. Yeah. I was just, I was curious. Sure. Good tidbit to ask you and for me to think of. I got to tell you, Nomar, so some of your works are, I mean, they're great, but definitely things that I would not read at bedtime.
You know what? And I wear that as a badge of honor. I love to scare people.
Would you consider yourself a modern day Vincent Price, or not really? You're a totally different breed.
I'm probably a different breed, but maybe part of the amalgamation of whatever I am. I'm sure there is some Vincent Price influence.
Okay. Yeah, he's this looks like a clever one. Anything you'd like to advise us on this one?
This was actually my second book that I put out, and this was traditionally published. My first 2 books were published by traditional publishers, and you do a whole lot of work. Now, there were very lovely people, great editors, great publicists, and all that good stuff. I learned a ton, which is really great, but there's no money in it. It's a company that's taking a risk by making a book, and they make hundreds of them, sometimes even thousands. And my books in particular were in Walmarts and Targets and all that stuff, which is great.
Yeah.
It's very cool, but you work for 2 or 3 years on one thing and it barely pays anything. So after my second book, and not making a whole lot of money, and of course you can't make a living that way, I have turned into self-publishing and doing everything myself, and you can make a lot more money that way. So it's been working out a lot better. But yeah, this was my second and last book that was put out by a traditional publisher, and it's got a bunch of stories in it. One in particular that I find interesting is about this woman who had some missing time. She and her, this happened in the 90s, and she and her husband were just about to go to bed, and they had gone upstairs, and their children, their 2 kids, they were teenagers, they were downstairs, and they were just about to watch a movie. It was just before 9 p.m. So she's in the bathroom brushing her teeth, and her husband is kind of like getting the TV turned on in bed and stuff. And he sees this light outside the window. And so he goes up to the window and he's looking at it. And then he looks to the other side and he's like, okay, that's the moon. What the hell is that thing? And it was this big round thing of light, this big orb, low like the moon. And so he's like, honey, come look at this. And so she comes out of the bathroom and she goes and looks. She's like, what the hell is that? And he's like, you want to go outside and look at it? And she's like, yeah. So they go downstairs and they're about to go outside. And the kids are like, what the hell are you doing? And they're like, I don't know. There's a strange light outside. You want to come out and look? So all 4 of them go outside on the front porch. And they have to look off to the far right to see this light in the sky. and they see that the moon is like on the other side of the house. And as they're watching it, the light, zoom, comes right to the front of the house and lowers. It doesn't descend or land, but it's just above the treetops. And they're all watching it, and then it blinks out. And they're like, whoa, what the hell was that? So they're coming back in, and they're all kind of excited, talking about what this weird light was doing. And then one of the kids notices on the TV that their movie was over. They saw the credits rolling. And they're like, hey, the movie's done. What the hell? We're only outside
No.
like 5
Really?
minutes. Yeah. And so mom's like, no. That's the previous movie, and your movie's about to start. And they're like, no. That's the credits of the movie. I guess they had seen it before or something.
Mm-hmm.
So she goes into the kitchen and looks at the clock on the oven, and it's just after 11 p.m. So the entire family lost 2 hours. And it freaked them out. They didn't really like to talk about it. And she told me the story some 40 years later, maybe 30 years later. And it was crazy. She had no explanation for it, and I didn't have any answers for her either, other than, wow, thank you for telling me. But at one point, because she had a bunch of stuff happen to her. And so, I'm taking all of her information down. But at the end of our interview, she's looking at me with like tears in her eyes. And she's like, why me? And I have no answer for her. The only thing I could tell her is, by you sharing your story, somebody else who does not feel like they can come forward might read your story and maybe not feel so alone. Like they might feel like somebody else is going through this. Somebody else can relate to it. Yeah. It's not the best answer, but no. I think it gave her a little bit of comfort,
It is comforting, and it's interesting, Nomar, that there's so many well, just for our UFO fans, I better put that one back up. I'm a UFO freak, but that's the whole thing. When you have other people that go, I've seen that too, or I had a bizarre experience myself. Speaking of which, by the way, Nomar, sharing others' experiences, going all the way back to the say mid 1940s. What's your view of? I call it tranche, but those of us who went to Harvard call it tranches, number 1 through 4, for the disclosed UFO UAP file so far. Do you have any opinion on them, one way or the other, or any?
I do. I haven't seen the 4th batch yet. I have it downloaded. I haven't gone through them yet. Yeah. But I've gone through the other 3 batches, meaning I've looked at every picture, I've watched every video, and I looked at almost every file. I haven't read every word of every file because I would still be doing that. I was mostly looking for like Maine, the state of Maine related stuff, and which I did find a bunch of things. But the first batch that came out was the most complex and the most dense, and had the most, I think, interesting footage. From the from military aerial vehicles, or I think it was mostly Navy stuff. But anyways, I think that first batch was probably the best. Now the 3rd batch was really light on video, but what was different about it is that they had witness videos. It wasn't like government videos. It was videos that witnesses had sent in to the FBI, and they were interesting enough to the FBI and CIA or whoever to keep them. And there was one video in particular that had 2 orange orbs in it, and they were flying in tandem, and you could see them through the trees and in the sky, and it was really interesting. Probably one of the best videos I saw. But yeah, it kind of all over the place, but that's kind of my thoughts on it in a nutshell.
So you think that there's, I'm sure most people would agree when I say I believe there's something to it, and then everybody says, "Give us more, give us more."
Yeah. Give us more, definitely. And I can be conspiracy minded, so I have never been one to trust our government, regardless of the administration that's been in there. But especially with the administration that's in there now, I definitely don't trust it. But I do take. Some of those videos are very fascinating, but could they be a technology that we're just not aware of? Yeah, it could be. Like the U.S. government, a lot of people get this wrong. The U.S. government has never once, even after this fourth drop, admitted that UFOs and aliens are real. A lot of people think they have, but they have not. There's not been one spokesperson from the government in regards to releasing these files that has said UFOs are real. What has happened is the government has allowed people that work for the government, meaning they've been in the military, like Rush or somebody like that.
Okay.
Who says that these are real. That's great, but that's not the government saying it's real. That's a person who worked for the government saying it's real. So those are two very different things. So the U.S. government, as it stands right now, has never admitted that this stuff is real. Are they releasing some really interesting stuff and implying that there's something to it? Absolutely. But it has not been admitted 100% yet. But again, you got the Grushes and, the Nimitz footage, and all this really great stuff. But again, that's not the government admitting it. Those are people that worked for the government that are saying that they are real. I like to put that distinction out there just so people know that, the government hasn't come out with like, hey, UFOs are real. Like that hasn't happened yet.
Yeah. That's a very good point because, I don't want to disrespectfully say I fell for it, but I was in the mind frame, okay, well, look, they're putting this stuff out. So obviously by default, they're saying, look, it's real, but you're saying no. If they come out with a statement saying UFOs related to non-human intelligence are real, that's a whole different ball
game. And that has not happened yet. But people that work for the government have said UFOs are real, which, all right, cool. I take that into account.
Did you take this picture, my friend, or was that just
no? That's a postcard I found.
Okay, it's a hell of a that also sets the mood of your work. Sure. That's an old man that was in the mountain, which when he was in the mountain, boy, when I grew up, my parents used to take my brother and I there all the time, and so I guess you were telling me based on if it's a hard or soft cover or a certain version, you've got different covers.
Yeah, and I'm sure some of this was like promotional material at the time, but the coverage you just showed before this, if you want to go back, that's the cover that that's the official paperback cover. There is, if you go on Amazon, there is a different hardcover version, but this is the official cover. An artist named Mark Randall created this, and he did an amazing job.
That's it is beautiful. It really is. I mean, that's what else can I say? It's professional work and professional cover. We only come out at night. I'll read it in a day. I'm not going to read it at night. But what can you advise us would-be readers about this one?
Yeah, sure. This one is so since I was a kid, I've been writing short stories. Specifically horror fiction short stories. Yeah. I've never put them out publicly except for this one. So this is a book of short fictional horror stories. So none of it's real.
That's kind of reminds me of when I was growing up. Do you remember, we're probably not too far apart in age. I'm 55. Are you kind of...
I'm still in my 40s, but I'm getting up there.
Okay. Yeah, okay. I'm as old as dirt then. But I don't know if you remember, certainly I do. I used to get Rice Krispies with my older brother Kevin or cornflakes. And then you buy the box of cereal, number one, because it's junk and it's got sugar. But number two, when you're done, you punch out the cardboard back and you get a record you could play on a phonograph with a scary story.
Oh, cool. No, I never did that, but that's awesome.
Yeah, that would. So that's kind of you said a bunch of stories, but fictional, which is good. Although you need somebody who has lots of experience, I'm sure, like you, to come up with it. And how about your other work? God, you get so many of them. We didn't even get to your podcast yet. But.
Yeah, no, hey, that's okay. And first of all, thanks, Albert. There's a note up here, so that's really cool. Thank you. But Otherworldly and More, this is one of those companion books I was talking about. This is based off a documentary that I made. And the documentary is about this couple there that are from southern Maine. And they had been having like ongoing, seemingly extraterrestrial encounters. And they had all of this video evidence. And so instead of like writing a book about them or including like a chapter on them in one of my books, I thought it made more sense to tell their story via documentary because they had all of this video evidence. So I made this documentary called Otherworldly and More, and it's, I interview them and it shows all their evidence, which is really fascinating. And then I did a companion book, to go along with it. So that's what that is. And the documentary right now is exclusively on Paraflix Paranormal Plus, which is like a paranormal video service, kind of like Netflix, but it's paranormal stuff. So it's exclusively there right now. But at some point, I'm going to put it up for free on YouTube.
Oh, very cool. But that's see, shame on me, but I'm still learning. I'm still relatively new in the community. But Paraflix, I'll have to check that out.
Oh, sure, yeah. They got a lot of great stuff. It's mostly ghost hunting things, but yeah, it's some cool stuff.
Abducted New England. Geez, I'll believe that just by the fact that we've been talking about all this. So, Hannibal is a big follower of abductions. He's mentioned some of his experiences as well, and he's had some guests on his show. And any lessons to be learned in this besides grabbing it?
I think so. This is also a book that's based on a documentary, and the documentary is called Abducted New England, which you can watch for free right now on YouTube. And it was co-directed by me and a buddy, a guy named Bill Brock. And we interview these three guys that had some pretty intense encounters. And we also get a college professor to get their kind of interpretation of things. And so it's about a half hour long. And in my opinion, it's a pretty cool, fun documentary. And this is a book, a companion piece that goes with it that kind of gives more behind the scenes of the encounters and stuff.
Okay, very cool. And that's one of your trilogies. Just what the heck is going on here? I noticed you're one of the contributors.
Yeah, this I don't know if you're familiar with Timothy Beckley. Rest in peace. He died a few years ago, but he was a prolific producer and curator of strange stories, and he put a lot of these types of books together from all these different authors. And so each book has a story from a different author, and this was he was the first person who ever took a chance on me to kind of branch out and share some of my stories. And this was the book that I was featured in, and it's a story. My story in this book is about a winged humanoid that was encountered in Maine. Kind of interesting. It's got some parallels to Mothman. And he thought it was good enough to put in the book. And so I am forever grateful that Tim Beckley took a chance on old Nomar.
That's wonderful. Well, and yeah. I can see why. You've got, by the way, is this a podcast episode or?
I have two podcasts, and that's the old one that's no longer around. And the new one is called Haunted Pines.
Ah, okay. Haunted Pines. I thought let me see if I have that up there. But if not, I know. Yep, there it is, right on Instagram.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. So go ahead, Nomar, please.
So Haunted Pines is it's a very overproduced podcast, meaning there's like a soundtrack and sound effects, and I tell stories. So it's a storytelling podcast. Like, I don't interview people, but I find what I find interesting for stories to share. And the latest one that came out is called The Las Vegas Light. And they're all short episodes. They're anywhere from 10 to 20 minutes. And it's kind of like you can listen to it like on your way to work, and you get the full story, within 10, 15, 20 minutes. So The Las Vegas Light is two different stories that happened in Las Vegas fairly recently, 2018 and 2023. But I've also done episodes on vampires, Whitley Strieber from Communion, and that whole stuff. He had a black-eyed kid encounter, so I did an episode on that. Jeffrey Dahmer's mother, Joyce, she saw a UFO in Ohio in the 1970s, and I did an episode on that, on her sighting, which I thought was kind of interesting. So, but yeah, that's the podcast, Haunted Pines. They're short little stories. So
Dahmer's mommy, her sighting, was that before or after all the horrific things?
Before. He was still a kid. I think he was like 10, 12, 13.
Boy, that's and you can never tell. Was it for the most part, the UFO encounters for the most part seem to be good or or neutral, but you never know. Would you speculate either way about that impact that had on
Yeah.
Dahmer?
On Dahmer,
Yeah.
you know, I couldn't imagine it had any impact. I think he was genuinely something happened within childhood. I read his father's book. It's called A Father's Story.
Mm.
And that came out, I think, just like 2 or 3 years after he was like convicted. And it's a fascinating book. It's really sad. It's tragic. And I think a lot of it, like reading that book, really shows you how screwed up Dahmer's childhood was. And his parents just didn't see it. He needed help. He was always the real quiet kid. He didn't have any friends. And we're talking at like 6 years old. And it never changed all the way through high school. In high school, he had a few more buddies, but he was mostly the guy that they could make fun of, you know, so they would have him around just to kind of like push him around or have, you know, make fun of him. But yeah, his parents, he needed help and his parents never got him help, you know. So I this might be a hot take, I don't know, but in my opinion, they're probably to blame, or they have an impact on why he was so messed up. But there were because he needed help, like there was something inherently wrong with him that they needed to recognize and get help. So I don't think they were the cause of it, but you know, as parents, I would hope you could recognize something's wrong with the kiddo, and you know, you try to get him some help, but they literally did nothing. In fact, they kind of ignored him for a while because they had such a volatile marriage during these developing years for him, that he was really ignored and kind of left to his own devices.
That is sad. It's
and I'm no Dahmer expert, but I read the book and I really liked it.
Yeah, it's I really like all that I can see of your work, and I haven't even scratched the surface of it yet. You know, experiencer, author, filmmaker. What is it that you haven't done yet, but you'd like to do?
Ooh, I would love to make a movie. My girlfriend and I talk about that a lot. Okay. We would love to make a horror movie. You know, that's a rich person's game. So, you know, it can be done. Obviously, independent movies get made all the time, but you know, trying to find the time, trying to find some sort of budget to make some stuff happen. But yeah, I think that's the one thing I haven't done, and I would love to make like a full-fledged, really good horror movie. You know, I mean, I go to the movies often. I loved Backrooms and Obsession and Weapons and The Substance. There's some really great horror that's been coming out, you know, the last few years. So exciting. It's exciting to see like where it goes next, you know.
Very, very cool. It's been totally awesome having you on, Nomar. And I'd like to talk to you just for a couple minutes once we go off air. But sure. I can't thank you enough, and I'm sure the almighty Hannibal himself would love it if you came back on again soon, because things always develop, and there's all sorts of weird stuff in the skies and on the ground.
Sure.
Any scary tidbits or weird incidents that you'd like to leave us pondering before we sign off?
Yeah, I'd like to tell one quick story, one that has stayed with me for years. So in 2009, there was this woman in southern Maine. It was during the summer. She was outside talking on the phone with her dad, and her dog was with her. And the dog is kind of acting weird, like it's staring at something and not moving. And she's like, what the hell's wrong with you? But is very distracted talking to her dad. And then at one point, the dog starts to develop this really strange guttural growl. Of course, she's heard the dog growl and bark before, but this was different. And the dog then stood up and was staring at something really intently while it was growling. So she was like, hold on, Dad. And so she looks at the dog and follows its gaze across the yard. And at the base of a tree across the yard, she claims she saw an alien. And it was knelt down and it was staring directly at her. And she said it was all arms and legs, like it was very spindly, like really long arms, really long legs. And it was, you know, knelt down. And she sees this, and of course she's freaking out. So she's on the phone with her dad, and she's like, Dad, I gotta go, and hangs up the phone and goes to put it in her pocket. So she's going from her ear down to a pocket. And that seemed to signal to the dog to go run after this thing. So the dog takes off running and starts barking. And at this point, the alien stood up and is now staring at the dog and starts to run away. The woman said that this alien was like 8 feet tall when it stood up. And as it's running, it starts to disappear from the head down. And at one point, she's just seeing legs running. And then it disappears completely or cloaks completely. And the dog stops running and is just continuing to bark at this thing. So she wrangles the dog and gets him inside finally. And her boyfriend's inside. And he's like, what the hell's going on? And she tells him everything that happened, and he believes her. She's not one to make up stories. She's not into UFOs or the paranormal, and he believed her. So they go outside to see if there's any sort of evidence, footprints or anything, and they didn't find anything. But this happened in 2009, and I talked to her over a decade later, and like to this day, when she closes her eyes, she sees this alien, and she's like, "Why the hell was it in my backyard?" And of course, I didn't have a good answer for her, but so yeah, it is what it is. But
well, why wouldn't you see it?
But yeah, so I that story has stuck with me. It's such a fascinating story.
It is. That's one thing I have to say about what I've
for sure, Will.
What I've learned with your work, and I've watched, at least I've watched a few of your YouTubes, and it's fascinating and enthralling. So
Thanks,
so I thank you so much. I'll talk to you just for a couple seconds afterwards, but I think everybody enjoyed it. And,
I hope so. Thanks so much for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, thank you, sir, and we'll speak again. All right, folks. We'll speak to you soon. We'll have another episode coming up within a couple of days. Check the schedule on YouTube from the Almighty Hannibal TV. We're going to have all sorts of UFO footage from viewers. Bye-bye.